Everyone right now is saying rent is cheaper, just invest the rest. And mathematically, that could be true. But most people stop the conversation way too early. Because buying a home is not just about what leaves your bank account, but it's also about what stays with you. Let's be fair. Buying a home is expensive. Let's use a simple example of purchasing a home that's $400,000 for an average first-time home buyer. Their down payment is probably going to be 3.5% if they're using FHA, which is 14 grand. And you have another 3% just in closing costs, which is $12,000. So before you even get the keys, you have to write a check for $26,000. That right there already scares people. Then comes the monthly payment. At today's rates, which are high sixes, low sevens, with a loan amount of $386,000, you have an estimated monthly payment to be around $3,250. Now, that's what PMI, insurance, taxes, principal, interest. PMI sticks around until you hit 20% equity. And with only a 3.5% down payment, that's safely years away. Now, people hear that and immediately say, see, renting wins. But hold on, because home ownership has real hidden costs too. Stuff breaks, roofs age, and the HVAC just doesn't care about your budget. The standard rule of thumb is to budget 1 to 2% of the purchase price per year for repairs and maintenance. On a $400,000 home, that's $4,000 to $8,000, so let's use $6,000 to be reasonable. So year one looks something like this. Your upfront cash is $26,000. Monthly payment, that's 12 payments, $39,000. Your maintenance reserve, $6,000. So the total for year one is $71,000. That sounds like a lot, and this is where most people would stop. But here's the problem. They're only looking on the cash out and not the equity in. Because when that $400,000 home appreciates 3% over 1 year, that home is now worth $412,000. And that's before we talk about mortgage paydown. At 7% interest, especially in your first year, most of your payment is going to your interest, but you're still paying down some of that principal. And you're probably going to be paying down $2,800, maybe $3,000. So your equity gain in year one isn't zero. It's probably closer to $14,000 to $15,000. And that changes the conversation. Now let's zoom out a little bit, because real estate is rarely ever a 1-year game plan. $3,250 times 9 years is $351,000. Maintenance costs at $6,000 a year times 9 is $54,000. The total cash out from years 2 to 10 would be $405,000. Add year one of $71,000. So now the total cash out for 10 years is $476,000. And I know what you're thinking, what the fuck, 10 years, $500,000? How is this even possible? But now let's look at what happens on the asset side. That same $400,000 home appreciates 3% annually over 10 years, is now worth $537,000. That's $137,000 in appreciation. And we can't forget the mortgage paydown. At 7% on a 30-year term, you're probably paying $45,000 to $50,000 down in principal the first 10 years. Again, at the beginning of the loan, you pay a lot of interest. At the end, you pay a lot of principal. Plus your original $14,000 down payment is still in there, which brings your total equity over 10 years to around $195,000 to $200,000. Now that $476,000 spending looks completely different, because your effective housing cost isn't $476,000. It's closer to $275,000, $280,000, or about $2,300 a month. Now, let's compare that to renting. Let's say rent starts at $2,200 for a 3-bed, 2-bath, which is pretty reasonable in my area. And keep in mind, rents typically go up 3 to 4% a year. So over 10 years with a 3% annual increase, that's roughly $305,000. Let's say the rent starts at $2,500. That's $347,000. And at the end, you own nothing. Now this is where somebody's gonna say, I'll just rent and invest the difference. That's a fair point. And that absolutely can work. And for a disciplined investor, it can work extremely well. I'm serious when I say this. If you invest every dollar of the difference for every month for 10 years at a 7% return on average, you will build wealth. The math can favor renting and investing on a spreadsheet. But here's the part that people don't talk about. Most people are not disciplined enough to do that consistently, because saying you'll invest the difference every month for 10 years and doing it every month for 10 years are very different things. Life happens. Vacations happen. Amazon happens. Car repairs happen. And then suddenly the investment plan becomes I'll start next month, which turns into I'll start next year. And after 10 years, there's no portfolio. A house creates forced structure. The mortgage gets paid every month. And part of that payment builds equity, whether you're thinking about it or not. Now, is it the most optimal financial strategy? No. But for a lot of people, it's a strategy that they'll actually stick with. And that matters because the best wealth building strategies aren't the ones that look the best on spreadsheets. It's the ones you actually follow. And there's one more thing that stocks generally don't give you. Leverage. If you invest $26,000 in the stock market and it goes up 10%, you've made $2,600. Cool. But if you use that same $26,000 to buy a $400,000 home, and the home goes up by 3% in the first year, you've made $12,000 off of that $26,000. Now that's the true power of real estate. You don't need to control the full asset to make the appreciation on it. But let's be very clear, leverage goes both ways. If home values drop, losses get amplified too. This is not a buy at all cost argument. If you overbuy, become house poor, ignore maintenance, or buy in a declining market, real estate can absolutely hurt you. There's also real scenarios where renting plus investing wins. Like high cost of living cities where price to rent ratios are extremely high, or people who like to move frequently, or disciplined investors that follow through on what they say they're gonna do. See, the question isn't, is real estate always better? The real question is, can you use leverage and structure to actually build wealth? That's the only question worth answering.